We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
That it's kind of like, you know, you come home from school and your parents sit you down and they're like, look, you know, I just want you to know that your mother and father love you very much, but and you're like, oh, what's gonna happen?
What's gonna happen?
Yeah.
What does this mean? Yeah.
No.
But that's not what this is.
That's not what this is. No, not at all.
It's gonna sound like that, but it's not this. It's not that.
We've been doing this for just about a year. Mm-hmm. Like when this airs, it'll be just shy of a year, which is really amazing. And I've had an absolute blast doing it. I adore it. And we want to keep doing it. And I've showed you the document that I have of topics, like mm-hmm. It's 3 pages just listing off topics that mm-hmm. I want to cover. Like, we're going to be doing this for quite a while, I think.
Yeah, and we adore it, and we hope you do too.
And to that end, we wanted to give our listeners the opportunity to show their support for us as well. So if you go to our website, slayingmonsterspodcast.com, there is a button at the top, also at the bottom, that says support. And if you click on that, that'll take you to our Buy Me a Coffee site. For us, you know, it's buy me a coffee, but for us, it's definitely going to be buy me some books. Yeah,
books, or maybe some recording equipment that can help us sound better. You know, we're really kind of a fly-by-night operation here. We don't really have state-of-the-art equipment, so...
Yeah, I just want to let our listeners know that right now, this microphone is on a boom arm. And rather than a sandbag on the end of the boom arm, it's actually a plastic water bottle that is hanging off of it. And it's doing a great job.
It's doing a really great job.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about promoting it.
Oh, it really should. Like that's audio engineer right there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's our audio engineer, is our Nalgene bottle. So anyway, this is a free podcast. It's always going to be free.
Always.
Nobody has to give us any money ever. But just if you felt like supporting us outside of leaving reviews and things like that, telling your friends, if you felt compelled, you know, throw us $1 here and there once in a while if you can. And if you can't, no worries. Totally understand and just appreciate you listening. It's a huge gift to just have people listening to this podcast. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and we get it. Like, yeah, it's really, it can be really hard out there. And so, you know, we appreciate your support, and we also totally understand if financially supporting us is not viable. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think it's really important to me. It's been important to me since the inception of this podcast that it will always be free. Our back catalog will always be free. We're never going to gatekeep it behind some paywall or anything like that. You will always be able to listen from episode 1 of Slaying Monsters through episode 300 or wherever we end up. So yeah, cool. That's very, very important to us.
Yeah. All right, I think we've said what we need to say.
Okay, so we are up to episode 3.
What are we talking about?
A lot of it kind of comes down to the class divide, actually, that was starting to happen at this time. Where like you had people who were starting to become successful business people, and who like these were the people who actually did bootstrap, right? Mm-hmm. Even though the bootstrappers, that whole like pull yourself up by your bootstraps was always meant to be ironic, right? You know that.
Yes, I do know that.
Yeah, but you had these industrial barons now rising up, and I think that we saw them and their trajectory, and the idea that they could be knocked down by some ancient curse type of thing was very appealing toward people. Your
hubris is catching up to you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's also something that's going on throughout the entire course of all of this.
Yeah.
Because you see industrialization that you don't see in any other capacity anywhere.
I think that's no different from having like gutter press, the gutter press mentality, because basically we are waiting for the celebrities, waiting for the rich people to fail so that we can watch them fail.
And it's kind of this, it's kind of the same thing,
it's
right?
Like the sensationalism.
Yeah.
Like we want to see them fall.
Yeah, you see that arc all the time.
Yeah, because we want them to be human. We want them to remember that they're not gods and that they're human beings.
Right.
Unlike the pharaohs who never realized they were humans.
I mean, well, the pharaoh, he was a god.
Yeah, they were gods.
And they were all the same person.
I mean,
because he became a god and then they were all the same god.
How do you walk around with all those thoughts in your head?
You're just fucking rich and wealthy and you make all the other people do your shit for you, I guess.
But I mean, okay, if I were a pharaoh and I was like, boom, they were like, boom, you're pharaoh now. So now you have all these other pharaohs inside of you because you are a god.
Right, because they're all the same
all
person.
One. So you are the one.
Right.
And so now you're walking around and you're like, like, how do you not have like all these personalities vying for attention all the time? And if you don't, are you skeptical of this system? Because I would be. I'd be like, I want to have some sugar cane right now. No. I want to go have some water. No. I want to go have some milk. And then, like, you have all these inner conflicts. But if you don't have those inner conflicts, if you just like, I just want milk, how are all the gods responding? How are all the gods, like, just letting that happen? I'm talking nonsense. Don't put this in the podcast.
No, I mean, your inner conflict makes me think of Moon Knight, actually.
Yeah, it is like Moon Knight. I'm just saying, like, why aren't you skeptical of this idea?
I think they all lived in harmony.
Oh.
I don't think there was ever any question about it. There wasn't any like multiple personality shit at that time. By the way, Khonshu, the Moon Knight god, is a real Egyptian god.
Really?
Yeah, it actually is like the Egyptian god of the moon, Khonshu.
Oh, the moon. That's cool.
Yep. Mm-hmm. You want to introduce us?
Oh yeah,
we'll get something out of that.
Yep. Sorry, we are slaying monsters. Across the table, we got Matt here.
Yo.
And I'm EJ. And today we're gonna do the third part of Egypt time. Egypt's pharaohs of the pyramids. What is it called?
Curse of the Pharaohs.
Curse of the Pharaohs.
Good job.
Thank you.
Or Titanic, right?
Or how it all wraps into the Titanic. We will get there.
You'll have a chance to talk about the Titanic because we're about to hit that time period.
Oh, how exciting.
Yeah. So today, I'll be using River in the Desert, Modern Travels in Ancient Egypt by Paul William Roberts, and a Smithsonian article titled Ancient Mummies. I'll also be using the New York Times story, Times Man Views Splendors of Tomb of Tutankhamen, from December 22nd, 1922. So, when we last left Egypt, Howard Carter and his patron and friend, Lord Carnarvon, had just acquired a permit, which is called a concession, to dig in the Valley of the Kings. Despite advisement that everything there had been found, Carter continued. I mean, he's been at this for pretty much his entire life, since he was 17. And he has convinced himself that he knows something that others don't.
I love this. Also, he's in for a penny, in for a pound here. It's like, I mean, he's not going to give up.
Absolutely. Like, he spent all of his early life just had these disappointing discoveries. He's got something to prove, for sure. Yeah. His good friend and possibly lover, Lord Carnarvon, has the wealth to fund the digs. Lord Carnarvon, he's something of a gambler, and he probably got a thrill out of taking a bet when the odds weren't in his favor. And luckily for him, that's about to pay off. But first, it's the 19-teens, and therefore it's time for...
The Titanic!
Well, yeah, the Titanic happened and crashed, and it doesn't factor into our story at all, but yeah.
It's World War I.
Yeah, it's time for some war. When is it ever a bad time for war?
Oh, well, ask certain people and they'll say all the time is a good time for war.
World War I doesn't directly affect our story, but it did recruit a lot of the archaeologists who had been working in that region. And so that meant there were less people on the digs, which allowed more robbers to sneak in and try to make some quick money. Now, Howard Carter was still working in Egypt as a translator during the war. And he had maintained his connections with the black market in the past decade or so. In 1916, one of his agents passed him some information and said there was an illegal dig happening in the Wadi Seket Takut Zaid section in the western region of the Valley of the Kings. Now, Carter, he rounded up some of his workers and he headed straight to that area. They arrived late at night and found the tomb in a vertical cliff face 200 feet up, like 200 feet on the cliff face. You can only get there by rappelling down ropes from the top of the cliff. And they go to the top of the cliff and they see that there are ropes hanging down and there are people working to excavate this entrance to this tomb. So from where Carter's standing, he's looking down at them. He sees them chiseling. And remember that this is the guy who got fired for brawling with belligerent tourists. So Carter, he's not the kind of guy to just take this lightly, right?
Yeah. So he like immediately throws in some smoke grenades.
I mean, kinda. Carter cut their fucking ropes.
Nice. Nice.
And so now they're stranded like 200 feet in the air, clinging to this cliff face. Carter sets up his own rope and he rappels down to them. He describes this in his book, The Tomb of Tutankhamen. Shitting down a rope at midnight
Did you just say shitting down the rope at midnight?
No, shinning. He uses the word shinning. I mean, it maybe that was to add insult to injury, but yeah.
I mean, they're there. They're at the bottom. I mean, it makes sense.
It just took a dump over the side.
Yeah, he's a tough guy. He's a brawler. He's going to do what it takes.
I mean, that's terrible. That's horrible.
You know what? Whatever it takes.
You're stuck on the side of the cliff and then somebody's like pooping on you.
Yeah, but you know what? It's all for a good cause. It's all for archaeology. Anything for that. You think Indiana Jones was above shitting all over people to get what, to make sure it belonged in a museum? He would do it. Okay, sorry. So not shitting down a rope.
Shinning is the word that he used, which is strange. I think he means shimmying. Like, we would say shimmying now, but he says shinning.
I think shinning's probably an old word for shitting. Okay, go ahead.
So shinning down a rope at midnight into a nest full of industrious tomb robbers is a pastime which at least does not lack excitement. There were 8 at work, and when I reached the bottom, there was an awkward moment or two. I have this image in my head of this very Taika Waititi exchange where Carter's like on his rope and they're clinging to the cliff and he's like, doing some robbing then. Yep. How's it going? Oh, not so great. It's been
nice
better.
night for a grave rob.
Yeah. So Carter says to the robbers, look, you got a choice here. You can either climb up my rope and leave, or I'm going to climb up my rope and I'm going to leave you here. And they wisely chose to scramble their way up, leaving Carter and his workers to finish the excavation. That tomb turned out to be the cliff tomb of Hatshepsut.
Cool. I like her.
It contained only a stone sarcophagus. Carter speculated that this had been intended for Hatshepsut when she was still queen, but once she ascended to co-ruler with Thutmose III, she probably built herself her royal tomb instead.
So she was gonna go. So the cliff was a downgrade, and then the royal tomb that she had ended up in was that upgrade. Was like that nicer.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that the cliff was a downgrade. It was just like that was where you would keep your queen. Also, for what it's worth, they were putting her in the cliff to discourage robbers because it was really, really hard to get there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that was their hope.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, Carter himself had discovered Hatshepsut's tomb in 1903. Even this small little kernel was enough for Carter to prove that the Valley of Kings wasn't quite as exhausted as Theodore Davis claimed. A year later, as the war wrapped up, his work resumed in earnest. But it would take 5 more years of failure before Carter found his legacy. Now, in 1919, Egypt fell into turmoil as a revolution against the British broke out. See, Britain, they kind of used World War I as a pretext to declare martial law in Egypt. But the people, they didn't really care for that so much. Right?
Yeah.
Saad Zaglau tried to meet with the British High Commissioner and end the protectorate that Britain had created there. But Britain, after meeting with him, they just exiled him instead.
Yeah. And then through his exile, I was reading, he became like this hero, right, for the Egyptian people.
Oh, absolutely. It backfired for Britain. There were mass protests and strikes across Egypt and Sudan because that was like, again, we're simplifying a lot of this a lot.
Yeah. Boiling it down.
But that was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, where they were like, oh my God, you exiled this guy who was supposed to like peacefully end this. He was trying to do the right thing.
And like before then, at this point, there had already been like inflation and fighting between the soldiers and the people.
Oh yeah, there was massive. A
lot of upheaval.
Upheaval that had been going on in the region at this time. It was just so volatile, and that's why Britain was like, oh, we should just declare martial law and take over here. Yeah. The British Army was ultimately dispatched to regain control of the region, which, of course, whenever you dispatch the army to prevent political upheaval, this just leads to violent conflict. By July, 800 Egyptians were dead, twice as many were wounded, and both sides had kind of found themselves at a stalemate. Britain allowed Zaglau to return and eventually dissolve the protectorate, and this paved the way for Egypt to gain independence in 1922. In the summer of 1922, after 5 years of trying to dig in the Valley of Kings and coming up with nothing over and over again, Carnarvon summoned Carter to his home in Highclere Castle. You know Highclere Castle?
No.
So you actually do. You just don't realize it. It's the Downton Abbey house.
No way.
Yeah, that's where Carnarvon used to live.
Oh my God, what?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he was that rich.
Yes. I mean, he was an earl.
That's so fancy. Okay.
Now, when Carter visited him, the place had recently been used as a war hospital during World War I. Lady Carnarvon was attending as a nurse for all these wounded soldiers. And this whole process, the entire war put this massive strain on them and their family. He's feeling the financial pinch of that. He has sunk 5 seasons into fruitless excavations with Carter. Again, they found this cliff tomb of Hatshepsut, and there's just a stone sarcophagus in there because there wasn't anything, right? So Carnarvon is feeling very disillusioned by the whole thing at this point, and he's worried because he's actually starting to run out of money.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Can't he sell one of his many wings?
That's not what rich people do, though. You don't just sell your property. It's not really a thing.
I don't know. I was reading up on my own ancestry and how like we had so much, we were like super, super rich back in like the 1500s. And we ended up just being like selling off like something here, something there, something here, something there until there was like nothing left.
Well, I mean, I guess Carnarvon didn't want to do that because he didn't want to...
He didn't want to be that person that just lost everything.
Yeah, didn't want to lose all of his wealth by selling it off, right? I mean, maybe.
I understand. He wants to hang on to it.
Totally. Yeah. So at this point, summer of 1922, he's starting to plan his exit strategy to get out from this. This is ultimately... He sees that how fruitless this is at the time. And I'm sure at this point, also he's a gambler, but there's only so long you can do this before you're like, okay, I'm losing at this table. I have to cut my losses. That is one thing that Carnarvon's good at. He knows when to hold them, when to fold them.
Yeah.
Right. So their initial meeting felt almost like a firing. Carnarvon, he starts it by reviewing their time working together, and he's like, "Oh yeah, thank you for all of the hard work that you've done." And there's just like this visceral reaction where you're like, "Oh no, I know what's coming now."
Yeah, this is a compliment. This is what starts with
it's the compliment sandwich, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In Carnarvon's view, it's time to just throw in the towel, close up shop. Davis was right. Valley's exhausted. We had a good run. And Carter pleads with him. He knows there's at least one more tomb out there. Tutankhamen is this guy's white whale, and he's convinced Davis was wrong. Davis claimed he found the tomb, remember? But all he found was an embalming chamber, and Carter is positive of that. He's like, that tomb is still out there. Just please give me one more shot. And Carnarvon agrees. One more season, and that's it. Then it's over.
Cue the M&M.
The M&M?
Get one shot, one opportunity. I see this as like a trailer, like a...
I mean,
that's the beginning of the movie.
It kind of is, though. The fucking stakes, right? Like, Carnarvon's running out of money. Carter's facing legacy as a second-rate archaeologist with no real success to his name. Making all of this worse, the pair's old friend, Gaston Maspero, he retired in 1912 and was replaced after the war by Pierre Lacou. Now, and Pierre Lacou, he's the new director of the Egypt Museum, and he's much more strict when it comes to discoveries. So the way he sees it, they are property of the Egypt Museum because the Egypt Museum is the one that's handing out the concessions for the dig. Unlike Maspero, who was willing to like split things with the people who were funding the digs and all of that stuff, Lacou says, no, we gave you permission to dig here, therefore it all belongs to the Egypt Museum.
Ugh. It got all corporate.
Yeah. As we so often see, it's when things are bleakest that greatest success happens. On October 28th, Carter returned to Luxor with his back against the wall. He immediately started digging. He wasted no time. He's like, all right, we got to get in. We got to dig. We got to find this something here to justify this. He focused his workers on the ancient huts that surrounded Ramses VI's tomb. Now, these were huts that were built for the workers who had been working building the tombs. And to Carter, he thought there might be something hidden underneath those huts. But in order to find out, they were going to have to destroy all of the huts and dig through the rubble below. So
people living in the huts?
No.
They were
the workers were at the time, but not anymore.
Okay.
No. So he immediately sets to, all right, let's start tearing down these huts and let's find out what's below them. He had made a map where he had sort of triangulated the vague place where he expected Tutankhamen to be based around the tombs of Akhenaten and some of the other rulers that had been found in that area. And it's that area. It's the area of these huts. And so he's like, we have to at least try here. The morning of November 4th, Carter arrives at the site and he finds that all the work is stopped. He's like, what the heck is going on? We don't have time to waste. As he comes closer, he sees that the workers are crowded around their newly hired water boy. And the water boy is pointing at something in the soil. It's a step. The first of several cut into the bedrock, leading down.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah. Underneath the very first hut that they were excavating, they found a step leading down into the ground.
Whoa, the first hut. All right, man. Nice.
Yep. All the work that had been doing at that area shifts to that exact site. And within 2 days, they've revealed something. Carter describes it in his book. It was with ill-suppressed excitement that I watched the descending steps of the staircase as one by one they came to light. The cutting was excavated in the side of a small hillock. Hillock?
Hillock?
Yeah.
I think it's hillock.
Hillock?
I don't know.
And as the work progressed, its western edge receded under the slope of the rock until it was first partially, then completely roofed in and became a passage 10 feet high by 6 feet wide. Work progressed more rapidly now. Step succeeded step. And at the level of the 12th, towards sunset, there was disclosed the upper part of a doorway, blocked, plastered, and sealed.
Ooh.
Sealed door.
A sealed door. Not just some, like, cave opening and some... Yeah.
And even more than that, in a world that's been beset by tomb robbers, Carter found a tomb hidden under a series of long deserted huts with a sealed door. Like, not only would there not have been robbers, also, it's been under this other encampment. Like, that's further evidence that it wouldn't have been touched. It wouldn't have been tampered with.
That's great.
No one was there because nobody knew it was there because it was under all of these huts.
It's rare, isn't it?
It's totally rare. Yeah, I mean, you'd find them every now and then, but so many of these tombs had been ransacked. Because, yeah, I mean, you're talking 33 centuries. You know, it's been a long time. There's a lot of opportunity for people to get in there and rob. And we talked before about how it was actually part of Egypt's economy for a long time because they were taking things from the tombs and melting them down and making them into gold and then using the gold for other things.
Yeah, totally.
You know? So Carter telegrammed Carnarvon immediately and said, "At last we have made a wonderful discovery in the valley. A magnificent tomb with seals intact, recovered same for your arrival. Congratulations."
Yay!
He might have spoken a little bit too soon, but overjoyed at this news, Carnarvon's like, "We're going to fucking Egypt again."
Yeah.
And Carnarvon actually brought his daughter, Lady Evelyn Herbert, along. She liked to be called Eve, so we'll refer to her as Eve. She was very close with her father, and she really bonded with him over her love of Egypt.
Oh.
So as exciting as this was for him, this was very exciting for her as well. She had been announced 2 years earlier, but she hadn't gotten married yet. So she was still in this age of like exploring the world and trying to pursue the things that really interested her before she would have to go and settle down and have more of like a mundane life for herself. She and her father arrived in Cairo on November 18th, and they met with Carter before traveling to Luxor on the 23rd. The following day, with the tomb door fully exposed, Carter, he's there, he's with Carnarvon, they're getting ready to open it, and Carter spots something that's a little troubling. At first, he assumed that the door had been completely untouched, but now that they've excavated more of it, he can see that it's been opened and resealed twice.
Ooh.
Yeah. And in addition to that, as they were excavating, they found several other pieces of debris with names of other pharaohs on them. And so there's a moment where Carter's like, shit, all we found was a cache, probably something that a place where robbers were storing things that they had found from other tombs. This might not be a full tomb. This might be premature. Is this going to be another failure?
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody there is holding their breath, right? They open the doorway. They find a collapsed tunnel. And the collapsed tunnel, again, you're like, shit, somebody probably came through here, did a piss poor job, and it collapsed when they resealed the tomb.
Right.
On the morning of November 26th, Carter and his workers found a second door, once again sealed and then resealed. This door has a name on it. It's the name that's been haunting his dreams and fantasies for 20 years.
I believe it is Tutankhamen.
Tutankhamen. Oh, yeah. So he's working with all the delicacy he can muster, like surgical precision here, right? He makes a very, very small hole in the door, enough that he can get a candle through. And he holds it in there and he illuminates the chamber beyond. Carnarvon and Eve are standing by his side, and they're waiting with him as he peers in to see what's beyond this door. Everybody's holding their breath, and Carter, he sticks his head the whole way into the chamber. At first, I could see nothing, but presently, as my eyes grew accustomed to the light, details of the room within emerged slowly from the mist. Strange animals, statues, and gold. Everywhere. Glints of gold.
Yay! Exciting.
Can you see anything? Carnarvon asks him. Yes, Carter whispers. Wonderful things.
Yay!
Unfortunately for them, that was the end of their day. It was drawing to a close, sun setting. So the next step was going to be to have Reginald Rex Engelbach of the Department of Antiquities come out and inspect the tomb with them and begin to catalog their findings, because now they have a legitimate find on their hands. So now they have to go through all the bureaucracy related to this, going through, the proper channels for everything and all of that. Luckily, Carter and Carnarvon, they're very familiar with all of this. But according to Alfred Lucas, who was one of the workers on the site, Carter and the Carnarvons didn't wait until the next day. Late that same night, they snuck back into the tomb carrying torches and candles, kind of like robbers themselves. Mm-hmm. And since the entrance was still sealed, the men boosted Eve through the small hole and into the chamber beyond.
Oh, that's fun.
Now, Carnarvon denies that this ever happened, and Carter makes no mention of it in any of his accounts. But the following events that happened later on might shed some light on what went down during the excavation. And if Lucas's account is true, then that means that Eve was actually the first person to set foot in King Tutankhamen's tomb in 33 centuries.
Whoa.
Which is pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't even these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a suitable name, Eve.
How's
to get
that?
all biblical on you.
The first woman?
The first.
There you go.
Yeah,
Sure. In the following days, Carter and his workers, they're trying to get everything cataloged and preserved. And this whole process, remember, you have some photography. And this is where, at this point, photography is actually starting to be a viable tool for them. Mm-hmm. So we do have some photographs of the tomb as it was discovered as they go. But you're still relying a lot on people copying the hieroglyphics, doing sketches. Never mind the fact that everything in there, it's been 33 centuries. You have to be really, really, really careful to preserve all of this as you take it out. Mm-hmm. There's going to be humidity changes. There's going to be the possibility that stuff has just decayed over time and has to be, carefully taken apart. Some of this stuff was built inside the tomb and would have to be taken apart before it was removed. Like that sort of thing, right?
Oh, yeah, man. It's like a little apartment. It's like all you got IKEA furniture, and you put the IKEA furniture together, and then...
with the little screwdriver, right?
Yeah, you can't just take it out.
Little Allen wrench that you have.
Of your basement walk-up apartment. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Actually, I was reading about the guy who took the photographs.
Yeah.
Harry Burton. He had like a Hollywood background. I don't know if you read this.
I didn't read about this.
He basically was like really into studying lighting techniques. And so what he did was he took the photos in a certain way to capture the awe of the space and the objects. So the pictures that are taken of it are from somebody's perspective who is trying to capture that wonder and who has that Hollywood background. So I thought that was kind of an interesting.
That's really awesome. Yeah. When you look at these photos, you had a chance to look at some of them.
Oh,
right? Yeah. Like when you look at them, you do get that awe.
Yeah.
It is a really majestic discovery there.
Yeah, and I also was just like kind of amazed at how modern so much of it was. Like the jewelry that we wear today looks so much like the ancient Egyptian jewelry.
Yeah.
They look like old amulets. And I saw like some really cool, I don't even know what they were, but they were like these benches that were really neat, and they were like in the shapes of animals.
Well, that is probably the best known artifact in that antechamber. That's the funerary bed.
Oh, okay. They were really looked very modern, very like you would expect to see them in like some 1960s New York apartment,
oh, totally.
like fancy apartment, you know?
Yeah, that's the cow god Mahet Weret is on that funerary bed.
So cool.
Yeah. And actually, since you mentioned that, they were in the process of, cataloging and preserving that funerary bed. Mm-hmm. And as they're doing it, they look underneath and they found a hole in the wall. Up until this point, they thought this was the chamber. They thought this was it. And they find this hole in the wall, and Carter realizes there's something beyond this chamber. And in his book, Carter describes this as sobering, not like joyous, right? Because the thing is, he's got this little crew, and they are totally unprepared for the magnitude of what they found there.
Do you mean like what they're about to find through the glory hole, or like what they already found?
King Tut's glory hole? Yeah. Is that the name of this episode?
I don't want to assume anything, you know. I mean, he did have to have things for the afterlife. That would be a great feature for the afterlife. Cover all the bases.
Depends on which side you end up on.
I guess so. It's true.
So, no, it's because they were already having difficulty cataloging and preserving everything that they had there. And now, holy shit, there's more.
Now we got to do more work.
Yeah, right. So, because the thing is, you're talking about organic material, right? Mm-hmm. Papyrus, wood, that sort of thing mixed in with all of the gold. But these artifacts, they've been buried in a sealed tomb for 33 centuries. So as soon as that door gets unsealed, they start to react to the air and they immediately start to decay.
So that stuff is also probably decaying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. James Breasted, who was an Egyptologist who was helping to oversee the cataloging, said this: "Strange rustling, murmuring whispers, sounds rose and fell and died away. The outside air had altered the temperature and quality of the atmosphere, causing the wood to adjust to new strains. Hence the audible snapping and fracturing." So imagine you're sitting in the dark, holding pieces of ancient artwork given to a long dead king, and you're hearing the sound of cracking bones all around you, echoing off the dark walls of this tomb. Right?
Oh man, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, like, it's spooky. Mm-hmm. You know, it's spooky anyway. And now you have Tutankhamun's possessions actually like shifting and moving while you're moving around the tomb.
Wow. Like
they're trying to tear themselves apart.
Oh my goodness.
So creepy.
If you're superstitious, it would be like
the tomb is coming to life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It would lead to the whole like curse idea for me. Like it's angry.
Yeah.
You know.
All in all, the antechamber, the first one he discovered, contained about 700 objects, including furniture, baskets, chariots, dried flowers, meats, fruits, statues, beds, clothing, a chalice, and of course Tutankhamun's throne. Now the adjoining room, the annex, contained over 2,000 objects. And all of this has to be photographed, cataloged, preserved against the elements, and safely transported out of here and to the labs in Cairo. This whole process took 2 months. While Carter and his crew worked round the clock, tourists flooded the area, hoping to catch a glimpse of these artifacts as they're being removed, because they're coming out of the tomb while people are watching. Mm-hmm. If the world had been interested in Egypt before, this discovery made them completely obsessed.
And did this hit all the newspapers?
Oh, yeah.
I imagine it would, yeah.
Yeah, the media started calling it Tut-mania and Egypt-mania.
Cool.
Precursors to the later lizard-mania.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Carter, for his part, he hated all the media attention. And I mean, I don't blame him, right? He has work to do. And his work is like stacked against him, too. He's hot-tempered to begin with, and so he could be very short with the reporters and the tourists. By his own account, he disliked gawking onlookers and said that they slowed the work and they threatened the artifacts. Because of course, as you're wheeling these things out and people are like, oh, they're trying to touch them and shit, right?
Not good.
And then all around the clock, people are showing up. So they actually need to install iron gates on the door of the tomb. And they had guards that stood watch all the time, because otherwise robbers would break in, but also tourists would just break in at night and like look at shit.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you about that, if they had security.
Yeah, they started posting up guards. Okay. They had to.
Yeah.
On February 17th, 1923, Carter and Carnarvon stood side by side at the far wall of the antechamber. This is where they found the hole. Decorating this wall is an altar with 2 statues facing each other. Between them is a sealed doorway leading to yet another room. Working carefully to preserve their surroundings, Carter and Carnarvon chip away at the rock. Also helping them out is Arthur Crudenton Mace, who is an Egyptologist on loan from the Metropolitan Museum. I always think it's kind of funny how you can like get these guys loaned out as if they're books or something like that.
I was just gonna say that's kind of weird.
Yeah, can we get AC Mace out here?
I'm sorry, you've had him for too long. You have fees now.
Right? Yeah. What happens if they don't come back? Do you have to pay?
Or if they come back damaged? Like, I'm sorry, he's missing an ear.
Well,
we got
AC Mace actually did come back damaged, but we'll talk about that in the next episode.
That's right.
Beyond this doorway is a staggering sight. The sarcophagus of King Tutankhamen, the boy pharaoh.
That's like the mother lode. There needed to be music for that. Because that's like, I don't even think they expect that?
I don't think so. They didn't know what they were going to find. This sarcophagus is made of quartzite, and it's carved with the figures of 4 gods: Isis, Nephthys, Neith, and Selkut. And they all have their wings spread to protect the body inside. You know that standard, with wings spread.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, protecting the body inside. Mm-hmm. Inside this sarcophagus, they open it up. They find 3 nested gold coffins. And the final one contained the mummified body of Tutankhamen, wearing the legendary gold mask that is...
so beautiful.
Yeah, and one of the most iconic archaeological images in the world.
God, that must have been incredible to see.
Yeah.
And it's gold, so it's probably still
gold.
Shiny and just
so
beautifully
much gold.
Perfect.
Yeah. Beyond this room, there's yet another chamber that they started calling the treasury because it contained a whole bunch of other gold artifacts, as well as the pharaoh's canoptic chest, a shrine to Anubis, and a series of bricks containing the funerary text known as the Book of the Dead.
Oh, is this the only Book of the Dead? Is this the Book of the Dead, or were there others?
Oh, well, so the Book of the Dead is more like, it's more just a idea.
Okay.
And so they had written it out on these bricks, but it's not like there was a single Book of the Dead. It was like something that you would inscribe in places, almost more like a poem or something like that. Yeah. There are 4 rooms total in it. They've discovered 3 thus far. This is not something that any other archaeologist has even come close to in finding. Tutankhamun's canoptic chest was a 4-compartment alabaster box, and each compartment contained a different organ: stomach, liver, lungs, and intestines. All the best parts.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about the embalming process?
Well, just that when I went to look into it a little bit, I found a kids' website about it. And one of the steps was, step 1, okay?
Okay.
Insert a hook through a hole near the nose and pull out part of the brain.
Yes.
Okay. Step 2, make a cut on the left side of the body near the tummy.
Near the tummy.
Yes. And so that's when it dawned on me that I had found a children's website, because I don't think that anybody would actually call it tummy.
You don't think that that's scientific? That they're like... Yes, first we'll make an incision along the subject's tummy.
Yeah, along its tum-tum. Yeah. I really do think so. And by the way, this is mylearning.org. Maybe it's not for children, but I thought that was adorable.
It can be for everyone.
Listen, I learned something.
Well, there you go.
I learned that number 8 is cover the corpse with natron for 70 days. Do you know what natron is?
Yes, it took 70 days to do the whole embalming process. Yes, I know what natron is.
Sorry. But I thought that was really funny.
It's funny that you ended up on a kid's website.
I did.
It's also really funny that there's a kid's website where they're like, first you take this hooked device and you shove it into their nose, and then you rip out the brain in chunks.
I know, that's what I also thought. And I mean, honestly, maybe it's not a kid's website and they just chose a really silly word to use.
Maybe it's a translation thing.
I mean, maybe. Anyway, it was very cute. All right.
Yeah, so they have this hooked instrument that they use. They shove it up your nose and they pick pieces of your brain out bit by bit. Mm-hmm. Then they cut a hole in your left side near your tummy, and they use that to remove all of your vital organs and put them in the canoptic jars. So again, stomach, liver, lungs, and intestines. The heart they leave inside your body because they consider that the essence of the person, so that remained with you. Then they packed the body with...
I was going to say napalm.
and lit it on fire.
Well, wait, they packed the body with, didn't they pack it with
wrapped.
like, they wrapped the body with burlap?
Well,
That's what I did in elementary school when I made a mummy.
when did you make a mummy?
Oh, I made a mummy for an elementary school project, and it was the best.
What were you mummifying?
I don't know. We were learning Egypt. I just found some. I just said I just killed somebody and like made him into a mummy. It was fine. No, I'm just kidding. I created this like paper mache guy.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then I wrapped him with burlap.
Yeah.
And I got the chance to draw all these ancient Egyptian like the gods with the outstretched wings.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I did all of that, and I made all these. I mean, it was so colorful and beautiful, and it was life size. It was the size of a person.
Oh, wow.
It was the coolest
That's
project
awesome.
ever. I loved it.
That's really
so
cool.
in my brain, I can't stop thinking about burlap. I don't know if that's true.
So first, they would have packed the body with salt inside and out.
Oh, okay.
And that dried the corpse out. So that's why you end up with like the desiccated mummy appearance because of all
Yeah.
the salt. Mm-hmm. And then they wrapped it in linen, not burlap,
Aha.
but linen.
It's nicer.
All the way down, like they would wrap individual
Yeah,
fingers.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Toes. And then once the body was wrapped, they started putting jewelry on it. Like amulets. They used amulets for protection during the journey for the afterlife. And then they put a mask on the head as well. And now, finally, with all that done, the body's ready to be interred.
It's a really fun arts and crafts project.
Yeah, I'm sure they had a lot of fun doing their arts and crafts.
I mean, I would like it. I would want that job because it's very precise and it's probably very calming, you know?
I'm sure it was.
You know,
yeah.
just one toe at a time. You just get to shoot the shit.
It was the priests. The priests were the ones that were doing it.
I would want to be a priest. That'd be fun. I think it'd be a very relaxing job.
I mean, probably.
Yeah.
Keeping a watchful eye over all of Carter's work is Pierre Lacou, of course, Gaston Maspero's successor and the new head of the Egypt Museum.
Yeah, stick in the mud.
Yeah, a little
Red
bit.
tape Lacou.
Yeah, that's what they called him.
That's
Red tape
what they
Lacou.
called him.
As we mentioned, he's more of a hard-nosed than his predecessor. He kind of took it upon himself to reinterpret the language of Carnarvon's concession. See, from Lacou's perspective, everything found in the tomb was going to be property of the institution granting permission to dig, which just so happened to be the Egypt Museum. He was like, that's the way the concession is worded here. It's been a source of frustration between all the parties, right? See, according to the language, any intact tomb was considered property of Egypt, but any tomb that had been pilfered would be split between Egypt and Britain. Contents, anyway. So Carnarvon and Carter were saying, well, the antechamber had been accessed and resealed, so the tomb, obviously, we're considering it pilfered. But Lacou says, this burial chamber that you found, this second entryway beyond the glory hole, this was intact. This doorway was intact. Therefore, the tomb itself is considered intact. Carnarvon thinks this is fucking preposterous. Because not only has he spent the last 20 years amassing his own personal collection of antiquities, but he's invested thousands of pounds into this endeavor, and he's already under a financial strain.
So that's an interesting thing. So he's upset because he's not going to be able to make a lot of money off of this.
Right.
Because they're taking it all.
Yeah, and he wants to get artifacts that he can then keep or possibly sell to recoup some of the losses. I mean, and he rolled into Egypt in 1905. So he's actually been doing this for over 15 years. He's been doing this for 17 years.
Yeah, it's not a good rate.
Yeah.
Not a good rate of return.
I mean, he did find some stuff.
Yeah, I guess.
But he needs to be able to get stuff from this tomb.
So, but you're saying even a pilfered tomb, half of it goes to Egypt, right? And half of it goes to Britain?
Right.
But it doesn't. But does any of it go to him?
Well, he would get the British.
Is he the Britain?
A portion of the British. Yeah.
He's the portion of the Britain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lacou's claim threatens to render all of Carnarvon's investment worthless. Carnarvon is starting to get a little desperate, right? He needs to make his money back. So he contacted the London Times and he says, you know what? I'm going to sell you the rights to the entire story of the discovery. You and you exclusively. And of course, the London Times is like, fuck yeah, let's get on this.
Smart guy.
Of course, once the London Times had the news, everybody else was like, oh my God, we have to get on this too. But they don't have exclusive rights. So they're not allowed to like come into the tomb and take pictures and do all of that. Reporters swoop into the area and they crowd the scene even more. You've already got tourists surrounding the place. Now you have reporters surrounding the place. Among these reporters, believe it or not, was Arthur Weigel, Carter's old roommate, the guy who had the cat sarcophagus break apart on his floor. He's now working as a correspondent for the Daily Mail, which of course was run by a fascist Nazi sympathizer, as we discussed in our Surgeon's Photo series.
It all comes back. It all comes back around, guys.
So there has now been a media frenzy that's created in this area. It's essentially been running ever since the tomb has been opened. And this is where we're starting to hear rumors of a curse. Weigel himself spearheads the curse talk by printing a horrifying story. According to the New York Times from December of 1922, tale goes like this. Incidentally, the day the tomb was opened, there was an incident at Carter's house. He brought a canary with him earlier this year to relieve his loneliness.
Aww.
I know, it's sad, right? He was so lonely there by himself because Carnarvon wasn't there.
I guess Weigel was a shit roommate. You didn't want to hang out with him.
Well, Weigel had left long before this. He was working as a correspondent.
Okay.
When the party was dining that night, there was a commotion outside on the veranda. The party rushed out and found that a serpent of similar type to that in the crowns of Tutankhamen had grabbed the canary. They killed the serpent, but the canary died, probably from fright.
From fright?
The incident made an impression on the native staff, who regarded it as a warning from the spirit of the departed king against further intrusion on the privacy of his tomb. And here, we see the first whispers of a curse associated with the opening and excavation of that tomb. It's strange to think that this event, if it even happened, would have been reported in the newspapers. Like why would you have known that at all, right? It never got written up in Carter's personal account of the discovery. I mean, it's possible that it was trivial to him, or like silly superstition. This whole idea that his bird died because it was eaten or bit by a cobra or scared to death by the cobra. But it's also possible that it just like never happened at all. We do know that Carter liked to keep birds. That's a fact. But I can't find anything to corroborate that his bird was killed by a serpent beyond this repeated rumor from the New York Times.
I hope it's not true, because I don't want the birdie to be. Or the snake.
I don't want the idea that the snake could just like slither into the house and get the bird too. That's really terrifying.
You hate snakes.
I do.
And I love snakes.
Yeah, it's pretty dramatic for me.
Yeah, it's probably not a true story.
The New York Times article itself is a retelling of a story published by Weigel. And Weigel himself was refused access to the tomb because, of course, Carnarvon had an exclusive deal with the London Times. It's possible that Weigel just started making shit up, either out of necessity or malice, or maybe even both.
He's like, I can't get this, so I'll start this.
Right.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either way, the whole thing is like a nuisance to Carter, who has this gigantic fucking workload ahead of him. He argues with Carnarvon, and the Earl, because Carter is so bothered by this, the intrusion of all of these reporters. Like, now they're everywhere. Now, because the London Times has access, they have to take the London Times reporters through the site and show them things and all of this. So this pisses off Carter, and he says to Carnarvon, I can't believe you did this. This is making my work so much harder. And they have a little tiff, and Carnarvon left on kind of ugly terms, returned to Cairo. They ultimately did reconcile over letters, and that's where Carnarvon sent his fond words from the last episode. I've been very unhappy today, and did not know what to think or do. There is only one thing I want to say to you, which I hope you will always remember. Whatever your feelings are or will be for me in the future, my affectations for you will never change. I'm a man with few friends, and whatever happens, nothing will ever alter my feelings for you. I could not rest until I had written you.
So sweet.
It's really sweet. Yeah. Yeah, so they made up. Less than 2 months after the opening of the burial chamber, Carnarvon summoned a doctor to his hotel in Cairo. He was suffering from symptoms of sepsis. Fever, chills, dangerously low blood pressure. It developed into pneumonia, more than his compromised lungs could handle. Remember, he's been suffering from pneumonia since his car accident. That's why he was in Egypt in the first place, because he was trying to seek a drier climate. On April 5th, 1923, Lord Carnarvon died. He was 56. His physician traced the sepsis to a mosquito bite on his face. He had shaved over the bite one morning and accidentally cut it and made the wound more severe.
Ooh.
That became infected, and the infection quickly spread to his blood and led to his death.
Damn, that's such an old-timey thing to happen, man.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah. This is devastating to Carter. He is adrift. He doesn't have his good friend. He doesn't have the support of the nobility anymore. Mm-hmm. And so Carter does what Sarah Winchester did and just throws himself into his work. Meanwhile, Carnarvon's concession starts to become a point of contention. If the person who owned the concession dies, what happens? It's not going to pass directly to Carter, but he has been overseeing the dig site since day one. So at this point, who does own the rights to Tutankhamun's tomb?
Eve?
She was the first one in it, right?
Yeah. Well, I just imagine it would go to the next of kin or something.
Well, if it went to anybody, it would go to Lady Carnarvon.
Oh, right.
If it was going to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. Carnarvon's deal with the Times continued, unconcerned with his passing, and reports immediately hit the press linking the Earl's death with earlier reports of the cursed tomb. Arthur Conan Doyle threw his own hat in the ring and suggested that tomb elementals had been set up as invisible guardians to protect the site. Whatever the fuck that means.
Well, you know what? Anything goes.
Tomb
Doesn't
elementals.
Matter. That's great. I love that. Tomb elementals.
I mean, and it's really fucking ironic because Arthur Conan Doyle created one of the champions of scientific and critical thinking, Sherlock Holmes,
Sure.
right? But he himself, he's a little bit what I call open-brained. He bought really deep into the spiritualism movement, and he believed in spirit photography. He, of course, swore that the Cottingling fairies were real.
I was going to ask about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like a big proponent of that. We'll do a series on them at some point.
Oh, you should.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're cool.
But they were just pictures that were cut out of a book and like stuck in bushes, and he was like, those are real fairies. Yeah.
It was well done.
And he also ended up in a very extensive rivalry with Harry Houdini, because Harry Houdini was going to all these seances and being like, these are magic tricks. And Arthur Conan Doyle was like, no, they are not. And Houdini was like, no, this is how you do it. He was like, no, they're real. Like,
It's crazy that Arthur Conan Doyle, he's so smart.
I know.
He's so good at creating this Sherlock Holmes character.
I know, but he was like, no, this is real. This is fucking legit.
You know, bless his heart.
He's like the polar opposite of Sherlock Holmes, which honestly, maybe that's why he hated him so much. Did you know that?
No.
He hated Sherlock Holmes.
Why did he create him then?
Well,
It's crazy.
I guess that's a little hyperbolic, but he had wanted Sherlock Holmes to like just tell a couple stories with him and then be done. But people kept asking for more and more, and publishers kept asking for more and more, and so he kept having to write more and more. And then he killed Sherlock Holmes in the final problem, and they were still like, can you get more stories? And he was like, God damn it, okay, fine. Like, just kept happening.
Man.
Yeah, so he really hated the character.
No way. I really admire Houdini. We don't talk about him enough, I think, on here.
Probably
but
not, yeah.
He's so important, and he reminds me of James Randi so much.
I mean, Houdini absolutely inspired James Randi.
Yeah.
Like, and Richard Wiseman and all of these magicians, me, you know, a little bit, right? Like
Sure.
like this guy who's like, I can totally do this. You know, I'm a magician, and I'm doing it as a, you know, for fun. You know, I'm gonna show you a show. Don't pretend it's real. Like, don't go out there and claim it's real. Like, and he was willing to show up and tell people, no, this is a trick. No, they're fucking with you, and I can prove it.
Yeah, they're taking advantage of you and your money
Yeah.
and your emotions.
Yeah.
It's not just money, man. It's like manipulation
It
of
is.
emotions. It's really not cool.
Yeah, it can be. And you see that sometimes with these ghost hunting shows where they do this and they're just reinforcing these people's beliefs, and they're like, no, it's the spirits that are making you that are upsetting you. It's not the fact that you had a tragic death and you haven't been able to process that, and so maybe you should go and talk to somebody about it. Like, you need to examine it yourself. And then they just enable these people to keep blaming outer elements, tomb elementals, right? Like, it's just the tomb elementals.
Yeah, instead of looking at what's pretty obvious in front of your face. Yeah, it's really sad. That's the stuff that really bothers me when it's like, no, this person needs therapy.
Yes.
Not an exorcism. They need a professional in their corner helping them.
You never need an exorcism.
Yeah,
That's never. Just it. Never. No one needs an exorcism. They do need therapy.
They do. Yes. There's always an underlying something going on that is not supernatural.
And you cannot tell me that if you do an exorcism, I don't care who the fuck you are. You cannot tell me that if you do an exorcism, that person is just suddenly fucking okay. It doesn't work that way. No way. Arthur Weigel. Arthur Weigel, he also got in on the curse talk, recalling his statement when the tomb first opened. Remember, he'd been there when they unsealed that outer door, and Carnarvon was kind of joking about it. And that disturbed him, that Carnarvon was so cavalier about all of it. And he said, that's Weigel. Weigel said, if he goes down into the tomb in that spirit, I give him 6 weeks to live.
Yeah.
And so Weigel started saying this. Oh, I remember he was not going down in the right spirit. He made himself susceptible to the curse. Chiro, the mummy hand-wielding magician who had been consulting Carnarvon throughout his life, he jumped on the publicity bandwagon too. He claimed that he had warned Carnarvon of an impending misfortune in Egypt. And to Chiro, he said that the death was clearly the result of stealing things from the tomb. That the Pharaoh didn't want things to be removed. He wanted them to stay with him. Never mind the fact that Chiro has this like fucking mummy hand in his possession.
Oh yeah, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, right.
Also, are you sure? Is it pronounced Cairo? Is it Cheiro?
Yeah.
Could be pronounced Cairo. Because, like, chiromancy sounds better than chiromancy. Doesn't it?
Cairo.
Huh. I'll be damned. You're right. It is Cairo.
Right.
Yeah, Cairo. Huh.
Cairo.
There you go.
All
My
right.
bad.
Nah, it's all right. I
So-
just keep thinking of cereal every time you say that, and I say that can't be right.
Oh, Cheerio?
Yeah, and because it also sounds like Cairo, Egypt, so I'm like, maybe there's something to this. And
Oh,
so
maybe, yeah.
Cairo
Yeah,
came
Cairo.
to mind. Okay, Cairo from now on.
Cairo.
Sorry, everybody.
But we probably won't mention him again.
Nobody cares. Okay.
It didn't help things that Carnarvon's son told all the newspapers that the family dog wailed and died at the same time that its master died. Lord Carnarvon died.
What?
But that story was a total fucking fabrication because his son was in India at the time, nowhere near Carnarvon or the family dog.
Okay, good.
Carter did his best to ignore the media and all of this bullshit. But what he can't ignore is Pierre Lacou. The museum director is in the middle of rights talk, and Carnarvon and his finances now are out of the picture. And so he's like, this is the opportunity. I'm going to kick this up a notch. And at this point, Egypt mania is in full swing. There's so many tourists coming into the tomb that AC Mace was actually worried that the weight of people around would cause the structure to collapse. There's that many fucking people. It's like an amphitheater.
It's also a really good point.
Yeah.
Could be. And Carter's making no money off of any of this, right?
No. And a lot of these people that are coming in are now nobility, whose status, this demands like special treatment. Mace actually estimated that he and Carter devoted a quarter of their time to just giving VIPs tours of the tomb.
Did they make money off of that?
No, they weren't even doing the work. Well, sort of, in that money was like funding Egypt, remember? Because you had to pay a visitor tax if you
Okay.
were going to do this.
Well,
but that
you know
money
what?
doesn't really disseminate to them.
Well, I'm glad it's going to Egypt. That's good.
In mid-February of 1924, there was a different kind of tour scheduled. This one, scheduled by Carter and Mace, and it was supposed to be for the families of the workers. So they could see what their labor was uncovering. It was supposed to be nice, like bring them in so they can see everything. But once word of this got out, it pissed off Egypt's Prime Minister of Public Works, Morkos Bey Hanna, and he pointed out that the Egyptian dignitaries hadn't been allowed to tour the tomb, and allowing commoners to tour before the dignitaries was a complete affront. Ugh. And to really understand why that angered Hanna, you have to understand that he was almost hanged for participating in the 1919 revolution. So he already doesn't like the British at all, and he really didn't like that some of them were coming onto Egyptian land and stealing their history. Hanna sent police to make sure that personal family tour couldn't happen. And that pissed off Carter. And so Carter threw his tools down and said, we're going to stop all work on the site. He locked the tomb and he left Egypt. He took his toys and went away.
At least he didn't beat anybody up.
I know, yeah, he's maturing, right?
Yeah, he's maturing, he's growing. But so nobody could get into this tomb.
Yeah, he's like,
there?
nobody can get in, we're not going to do any work, fuck you.
Surprise, usually that doesn't stop people, but okay.
Well, Hanna terminated Carnarvon's concession, sawed the locks off the door, and threw a party in the tomb.
Sounds about right.
Carter sued for the termination of the concession, and recruited Lord Carnarvon's lawyer, who just so happened to be the prosecutor who sought the death penalty for Hanna.
Whoa!
Yeah. So now there's all this litigation that's surrounding the tomb, and work stops for months. Hannah's trying to find somebody else to take Carter's place, and Carter's trying desperately to, get the concession back under his own name. In November, the commander-in-chief of the British Army was assassinated, and that gave Britain the final incentive to pressure Zaghloul out and forced a regime change. A more favorable successor to Britain was appointed, and they were able to kind of come to an agreement, Britain and Egypt. Carter could still oversee the dig. Lady Carnarvon would continue to fund it, but she couldn't take any antiquities for herself. And the Times would no longer have a monopoly on the journalism that was going on there. All the parties agreed, and in 1925, Carter returned to finish his work. And it's with the conclusion of his work and the growing shadow of the curse that we will finish our series next time.
Yay! Very cool.
Yeah. So you see the beginning of it here. With Carnarvon's death. Carnarvon's death is the match that starts the entire thing. Yeah. And it's kind of fueled by Weigel. If there's a patient zero or a primary source for the curse, it's Weigel himself. Because he's the guy who's like, oh, well, the cobra killed the bird, and that was wrapped up in the curse. And he's also the guy who's like, oh, if he goes down there, I only give him 6 weeks to live. He's very superstitious to begin with. He was freaked out by the cat sarcophagus opening, all of that stuff.
Yes, very much so.
So if there's a primary source, it's him. Carnarvon's death is the spark. And now there's this media frenzy that's happening too. So all eyes are on Egypt right now. And what we'll start to see in the next episode is the linkage of a lot of deaths and a lot of retconning of this person died. Did he see the tomb? Did he go to the tomb? Rather than, he went to the tomb and then he died. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. It's more...
It's juicier. It's
juicier,
right?
And sensationalism is more exciting than just the sadness of somebody dying for whatever boring cause.
Absolutely, yeah. Of course.
We all want a bigger reason. We want something bigger that connects us all rather than being just this singular sad death that happened.
Right. Yeah.
It comes from that whole idea of everything happens for a reason. We're all that human need to be a village, to be one, and to all kind of feel that at the same time.
Yeah, I think we're always questing for meaning is one way to say it, but it's not necessarily meaning. We're questing for the answer.
Yeah.
You know? And sometimes there's not an answer. Sometimes it's just like, well, he died. You know? It's very, very strange that Carnarvon got a mosquito bite and cut over it and got sepsis and died. Mm-hmm. You know? He happened to have compromised lungs from a car crash, and that led to pneumonia. You know, all of that is just a combination of factors. Mm-hmm. But we are always looking for the greater answer, and I think it's just in human nature. I think it's the thing that has enabled us to survive for so long and enabled us to do things like make tools and farm and all of this stuff. That curiosity about the world is at once humanity's greatest strength, but also a major weakness of humanity.
Yeah, we have to check it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to keep it in check. Mm-hmm. But it kept us alive too, I'm sure. Where you're like, oh, people keep dying when they go in this cave. Maybe I shouldn't go in the cave.
Yeah,
you know?
It's a pattern. Because patterns are important.
Isn't that what's happening here? People keep dying when they go in the tomb. I shouldn't go in the tomb. Mm-hmm. You know, even though it's not actually related to that.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that in the next episode when we start actually talking about all of the deaths and all of the people that are just like, oh yeah, he was vaguely around Egypt around this time, so yeah, he's probably cursed a tomb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Should we close with a joke?
Yes.
So we'll close with a joke sent in by a listener. EJ, why would King Tut be a terrible spy in D&D?
Why?
Well, he nails the accents and dialects of foreign lands, but he toots in common.
Ha!
Common, get it? Ha!
I get it. Very good, very good. That's a good one for our D&D listeners.
Hey,
there you go. Throwing them something. A little something to think about. Wrap your brains around that with some linen.
Mummify your brains with that.
Yeah, your dumb brains that don't matter.
Don't insult our listeners.
No, I just mean they're not important, you know? You
just rip them out.
Rip them out of your brain. I'm not saying,
feed them to the dog.
Yeah, exactly. Brains are, it's the heart that matters.
It is.
It's all about the heart.
Isn't it?
It is.
And isn't it really all about the heart at the end of the day?
It is.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Yeah. Don't go wandering into any tombs, guys. Just be careful.
Just be careful.
Just be careful.
Be safe out there.
Be safe. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for
You're
listening.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll talk to you next time.
All right.
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters. If you like the podcast and what we do, please share it with others or leave us a rating and review. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on Instagram @slayingmonsterspodcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.